Hey, what's up? Hope you're all doing well because there's a pretty big patch floating around that tweaks a bunch of the systems you thought you understood and will make you rethink how you manage provinces, subjects, and armies. Paradox put out an open beta for patch 1.0.8, and it's one of those updates that quietly rearranges the incentives under the hood so your usual play patterns might not work the same way anymore. First off, the economy changes are the kind that feel small on paper but add up fast in practice. Prosperity no longer just sits there as a passive bonus that eternally accumulates. There's now a decay mechanic, so provinces trend towards zero prosperity unless you actively generate gains, and the economic base calculation has been reworked to include things like trade profit and subject tax levels as part of how a province's output is evaluated. What that means in practical terms is your rich provinces will require active attention if you want them to stay rich, and strategies that relied on long-term set-and-forget building progression will be less dominant than before. If you liked letting a single high-prosperity city snowball into an empire's backbone, expect to have to periodically funnel investment or use mechanics that boost prosperity to keep that income stream steady. On subjects and loyalty, the mental model you've been using needs an update. Centralization now actively reduces subject loyalty, and decentralization increases it, with the new scaling being much larger than before. Think up to a full 30-point swing rather than the smaller numbers you were dealing with earlier. The ruler's diplomatic ability is also now a factor in subject loyalty, so leader stats matter a bit more when it comes to holding vassals in line. What this does to gameplay is fairly fundamental. Extremes of centralization are punished by lower loyalty, which makes annexing or integrating subjects a riskier proposition without the right trade-offs. And conversely, playing a decentralized game will buy you more subject stability. It's a design nudge toward balancing internal control choices with external expansion, and you'll see that reflected in how vassals behave in diplomatic and wartime situations. Levies and military systems also got attention in this patch, including fixes to levy cooldown logic at the provincial level and assorted fixes intended to make levy behavior less flaky. Players were encountering odd cases where levies wouldn't recover or recruitment behaved inconsistently, and this patch attempts to smooth out those rough edges. It doesn't magically fix every AI or balance complaint overnight, but for the player, the province-level levying ought to feel more predictable and less likely to produce one-off weirdness that breaks immersion. There are still community threads discussing AI levying patterns and recruitment spam, so keep an eye on behavior in large-scale campaigns if you care about consistent army replenishment. Quality of life touches arrived too, including a new combat tooltip and a cascade of tooltip fixes across the UI. If you've been frustrated by vague or missing information in the interface, you'll find a lot of those annoyances addressed. Tooltips are a small thing that massively improves decision-making when they're clear. And this update seems intent on making the UI less of an obstacle to actually understanding the game's systems, rather than being one more thing to puzzle over mid-battle. That new combat tooltip line in the notes is easy to miss, but it's genuinely useful for cutting down on misreads of combat outcomes. Technically, there's an optimization for save games in this patch. Binary save writing was tweaked to be more efficient, removing unnecessary whitespace and cleaning up save size issues, which should help stability and reduce the odd edge case corruptions or bloated files. The team rolled this in alongside a wide sweep of bug fixes. The official line is over 300 bugs fixed in the open beta, so a lot of the smaller, irritating bugs that pop up during campaigns had been targeted. Because this is still an open beta, the devs are explicitly asking for feedback and quick reports for anything that breaks under the new rules. The community reaction is predictably mixed. Some players are excited because centralization losing its one-size-fits-all value forces more interesting choices. Others are grumbling about edge cases where subject loyalty dropped in ways players didn't expect. There were hotfixes pushed to the beta channel very shortly after the release to address immediate issues, which shows Paradox is monitoring the rollout and reacting to glaring problems. But it also means if you jump into the beta, you should expect at least one tiny additional patch or two while the dust settles. Forum threads and Reddit discussions are already full of players reporting oddities, from strange religion flips in specific AI nations to questions about how levies scale with different pop types. So if you enjoy the meta discussion around patches, there's a lot to read through. Mechanically, the interplay between buildings, employment, and the rebalanced economic base is interesting. Building-heavy countries are handled differently now, which changes ROI calculations for certain infrastructure projects. Some automation systems were adjusted, so building automation no longer interferes with employment systems the way it did before, which should mean fewer accidental economic regressions when you let automation manage construction. That's a subtle change, but for long-running campaigns where you automate macro tasks, it prevents the automation from stepping on your carefully balanced economy. If you strip everything down to what will alter your typical campaign choices, it's four things. Prosperity decay makes province micromanagement meaningful again. Centralization versus decentralization now has real and sometimes painful effects on subject loyalty. Levies are more stable but still watched by the community. And a big pile of tooltip and UI polish plus back-end save optimizations make the whole experience smoother. The patch isn't a total rewrite of the game, but it's the kind of iterative system surgery that shifts optimal strategies and makes familiar patterns feel new. All told, there's a lot to test and feel out in this open beta. If you're the kind of player who enjoys the fiddly balance between internal administration and external conquest, this update changes the terms of that negotiation and will reward players who adapt rather than repeat old rhythms. The devs know this is a sensitive set of systems, and they put it in open beta so they could listen, patch, and course correct while people are actively playing under the new rules.